So one of the issues with someone who really starts to get into their religiosity, right, is that they've decided to make a turn in their lives. They've started to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've started to pray more. They've started to, fast more. They've left off certain sins in their lives. But they wonder, am I good enough? Is this going to be accepted? Or is it worth it? Right? And so what ends up happening is that as they're becoming more literate in religious text and the lives of great religious people, or coming into contact with those people, they're wondering whether or not they're good enough. And wait, how do I actually live that type of a life? How do I actually attain that rank? Or am I doomed now? Because this seems so far off, right? I just made what I thought was a major jump in my life to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I still feel extremely distant. And I know I'm nowhere near the ranks that are being mentioned here. And then wait a minute, they feared hypocrisy? That must mean I too am a hypocrite. Wait a minute, they were afraid of not getting into Jannah? What chance then do I have of getting into Jannah? And that's not what a timeless Quran and Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ is supposed to do to us. That's not why we look to the stars. We don't look to the stars to be saddened. We look to the stars in awe. And there is something that we take from the Sahaba of guidance, our stars, to be guided, role models. And so by doing this exercise, right, of actually looking at the traits, what are the traits? And then what's a proportion that fits my life? And what's a roadmap? And what's a standard? And what practical and meaningful steps am I going to take to adopt these traits of belief in my life and to avoid these traits of hypocrisy in my life? So someone might say, I'm feeling like a hypocrite. Let me go find a lecture on YouTube about how to not feel like a hypocrite. Or, I know this hadith about 3 signs of hypocrisy. I'm doomed unless I do away with these 3 signs of hypocrisy. Someone might say, well, let me just read Surah Al-Munafiqun. And just like the story of Maryam alayhi salam is not fully encapsulated in Surah Maryam, the story of the believers, al-mu'minun, is not just in Surah Al-Mu'minun, and the story of the hypocrites is not just in Surah Al-Munafiqun. You're just scratching the surface. And so it's not a lecture here or there. It's not a moment where you feel bad here or there. It's not simply a call to action within yourself that I'm going to start to be a better believer and less of a hypocrite. It is actually putting things in front of you and identifying the traits, identifying the process, and then identifying how you fit within that process. When I designed this course, what I did was first and foremost think about how to introduce the entire approach. And so why is it that Allah's earliest address of the hypocrites does not use the word hypocrites? Well, you have to know when it was revealed. So with the Baqarah, you've got to know why it was revealed in that fashion. So giving an introduction to the entire concept of hypocrisy and the entire concept of belief, and then the practical manifestation of both, and then the seerah behind why the Quran was revealed in the stages that it was, and then what that stage means to us, what that graduality of how Allah addresses how hypocrisy was appearing in Medina means to us for how hypocrisy gradually appears in our hearts and appears in our lives. The traits of belief stamp those out. And so what we do is we take a trait of belief, a trait of hypocrisy, put them against each other, and then for each and every single one of us, there's a spectrum with that particular row. Am I closer to this or closer to that? How can I get closer to this and get further away from that? So I think in the COVID era in particular, and I'm sure that people are sick of hearing about the COVID era, but we have to admit that the long-standing consequences of it are going to probably show themselves for the rest of our lifetimes, both on a societal level and on an individual level. We've spoken quite a bit about how people have had family trouble and trouble with those that were closest to them in their lives as a result of being isolated in small homes together, because now you're with a person and you're not sure that you really like that person because you're with them for so long, or they don't like you so much anymore because you're with them for so long. What about ourselves? What did we learn about ourselves? What do we discover about ourselves in this, isolation and seclusion that we had? And so I think even if those traits did not show themselves to us per se, there were certain vulnerabilities that made some traits, whether they were old or new, more obvious to us so that we can address. I understand that for some